Welcome back, everybody. Today is a very, very special day because I am in Tempe, Arizona at the Genius Network headquarters, and I have with me the one and only, the founder, Joe Polish.
Thank you. Well, it's great to be here with you, Mary.
Thank you. Thank you so
we'll
much.
try to have fun in the short period of time we have. And
That's right. That's right.
yeah, we're in between doing an event right now. So
Yeah, we're at Evan Carmichael's mastermind, and we're trying to do this during our break.
Yeah.
So we'll get as far as we can. So Joe, it's been said that you are the connector, right?
That's one of the things I do. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a connection network called Genius Network, which I happen to be wearing one of the shirts.
Yeah.
But I like to connect people with each other, with ideas, with themselves, because I grew up incredibly shy and introverted and traumatized, and I was very disconnected. So I think I got into probably just wanting to meet people, know people, and I was so damn shy growing up that I had to work really hard because I realized that, you'll hear that saying, time is money. Relationships are money. If your goal is to make money, I've never had an alarm go off and there's a pile of cash sitting there. It comes from going out and developing relationships with people, friendships. I mean, the joy in life usually comes through the relationships with other people and with connections. So certainly there's a lot of smart people in the world. So how do you crowdsource that intelligence and that capability? And so that's what I attempt to do.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
You had that book that you wrote. I think it's called Life Gives to the Givers.
Yeah, I think
it's here somewhere.
It's that blue one. Yeah, it's that
there
blue
we
one
go.
back. See how we strategically place these? No, those have been up there. We just hopped in this room. Yeah, life gives to the giver and takes from the taker.
Yeah, but what if sometimes the takers take from the givers?
They do all the time. And if you're going to be a giver, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when and how frequently you're going to be taken advantage of. Or in the book What's in It for Them, my latest book, I actually wrote that book for people that are givers, how to better boundary themselves from takers so that you can align yourself with people that are aligned with you. Part of this is there's no one that's probably watching this that has not been taken advantage of. And there may be people watching this that are takers, right? So how do you know if you're a taker? Well, look at your relationships, look at your intentions, and look at how many people will answer the phone when you call versus how many people avoid you. Because be the type of person you would answer the phone for. And who's the type of person that we would want to answer the phone for? Someone was calling or texting or messaging us, however we get our communications. The people that you have like, whoo, I'm excited that they're reaching out. They're usually people that represent giving to you in your life. There's something that they have that is valuable to you. And that's one of the ways that I look at it. And here's a difficult thing for a lot of people is you will see people in high status positions in society, government, high levels of companies, famous online, that are major takers. And it'll seem life is really unfair. How is it that they're making all the money? Well, one reason a lot of takers can make a lot of money is they don't have to devote any energy to having empathy or care for other people, so they can direct all those efforts at taking. However, what timeline do you want to measure success on? Anyone that's a taker could make a lot of money for, a short period of time, years, sometimes decades. I tend to think and believe in karma, even if people seem to have taken advantage and pretty much, raped and pillaged society for most of their lives and die with a lot of money, and maybe even people that don't really know to what degree they left a lot of scorched earth. You still have to live with yourself every day. I mean, if someone can go to bed at night and be okay, taking advantage of people, they're either a complete narcissist, a psychopath, a sociopath. They don't have the ability to feel empathy, and that's not a way that I would want to live. And I actually feel bad for people that don't. I empathize with people that don't have the ability to have empathy. I don't want them anywhere near me because they're going to leave a lot of destruction. But the point is, if you're a giver, You will develop your spidey senses. I used to notice red flags, but I was not even aware of the yellow flags. So in life now, I now look for yellow flags, not just red flags. And I only align myself with people that want to be aligned with me. I realize I have this thing called TAMI, time, attention, money, effort, and energy. And so I want to devote my time, attention, money, effort, and energy to people that are givers, not takers.
Love that.
Yeah.
And in your definition, like what is a yellow flag?
Well, first off, other people that have bad things to say about somebody. Doing a search online and seeing that someone has scammed somebody. There's a lot of, direct experiences that someone has had an issue with a person. Any sort of unethical behavior, lawsuits, things like that. And there are a lot of people that are good people that have had takers use the legal system to try to destroy them. In the last several years, with all the propaganda, there are some amazing people that have been attacked as a result of their telling the truth. So you got to look at this with a critical eye, not looking at the sources, some propaganda media or some group that has an agenda. I mean, there's yeah, so that's how I would Google searches, direct uh relationships with someone. Don't do business with someone that or go out on a date with someone that your friends have had like there's some guy that and there's like four of your friends are like stay away from this person. That's probably a yellow flag.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Actually, I was reading this morning some information around Jay Shetty, and there's all this stuff all over the internet about, how his story is actually a scam and,
Yeah.
he's not who he says he is. And there was like an investigator that was hired to research him, and it's all over all these websites.
Yeah. And that's probably an example of someone that rose very high. Not probably, it is an example that someone rose very high in fame and notoriety, but manufactured much of his stories. Doesn't mean he doesn't make nice videos and good videos, and they're very inspiring. But I knew this about him several years ago. I mean, if someone just looks up the original video that Nicole Arbor did, who's a comedian, so a lot of people, because she's outlandish, would not take her seriously, and they would try to, discredit what you take what she just showed. And that video is still up on YouTube. Anyone could watch it. I mean, he took quotes of very famous people, and some that weren't, and put his name as if it was there. And I don't think he's ever addressed it. And if Jay ever wanted to do an interview with me and talk about that, I would do that because I work with addicts. I work with people that have done some crazy stuff. I've been in recovery myself. So I try to hold space for people, even when it's not about making mistakes. It's about not doubling down. Like if you get caught in a lie, and it's clearly a lie, and there's so much preponderance of proof that it's a lie, which has been done with him, and you keep avoiding it, or you don't. I mean, it's like, at what point are you just a narcissistic con artist? And that's, people can make their own judgment on that. I want to see the best in people. I like the fact that people put out information that's helpful and inspiring, but do you really need to steal other people's content and other people's IP, or act like you're them, or that you said something when you really didn't? I mean, that's not accidental.
Right.
Maybe you hear an idea from someone and you share the idea. What human doesn't do that?
Right.
But when you do it with 50 different examples over and over again, and then you get caught and you remove it all, but you don't really address it. It's like,
up to it.
yeah, you taking responsibility, or you just, but that would be an example of a different value system, though. I would never do that. If he was sitting here right now, he would probably, like, I'm not doing anything wrong. And a lot of his buddies, and I know a lot of his marketing friends, they're all of the same, a lot of these influencers, they don't see any problem stealing other people's stuff. They don't consider it stealing. They're like, S&D, swipe and deploy, steal and distribute. It's theft. It's IP theft. And the reason it's called intellectual property is it's property. You don't break into someone's house. Would Jay like it if someone broke into his house, stole all of his food, all of his clothes, and say, yeah, but it's just public domain? No, I paid for this. This is my house. What are you doing? What's the difference with IP? There isn't. It isn't. And if you want to borrow somebody's stuff, like if I have rapport with someone and they're friends of mine, they're like, Joe, I really like this idea. Can I utilize that? Not use. I want to utilize. I want people to utilize me. I don't want people to use me. I don't want to use anyone. I want to utilize people. It's collaborative versus, taking something from somebody that's not consensual. That's what rape is.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Just in a different context.
Completely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, is Jay's listening? If Jay's listening to this, I would say that probably Joe is one of the best people to go to, just because you have such deep empathy for people.
Mhm.
Because when you've seen what you've seen and you've been through what you've been through, I think you just have so much more human compassion for, and it's not that, why did you do this? It's what made you do this.
Right. No, no,
Right.
and I try. Look, I'm not a perfect person at all. I mean, I openly talk about my, addiction struggles and things like that. However, I really try to do what I feel is the best thing, and it takes a lot of awareness to realize you're not right or where you screwed up. And I get, look, it would be really the problem with doubling down is that the more you go deeper into the lie or avoid it, wherever there's one cockroach, there's many more where that one came from.
Correct.
And rotten milk in a refrigerator doesn't get better with age, it gets worse, any rotten food.
Yep.
So there's a point where,
Yeah.
coming clean, I don't think weakens you. It actually strengthens you in even if society never forgives you.
Yeah.
Like I would encourage people. I recently did an interview with Lance Armstrong. And I didn't think I'd like the guy, right? Because Lance arguably had a major lie, and I asked him a lot of these questions. I asked him if he would, it's on YouTube. People can watch that video. And was he ever suicidal? I talked about a lot of things, and he made this one comment that if I would have done the interview with him, I don't know, maybe because it happened 11 years ago at the time that we're talking right now. And when I first met him, he's like, I've done a lot of work in the last 11 years. I mean, he was probably one of, if not the most famous athlete worldwide in the world. And then boom, all of that went away because of what his decisions and we talked through that sort of stuff. But the bottom line is, he said, if you would ask me this several years ago, I would have lied. I would have just lied to you. And there's a point where people are like, yeah. And when you're out there, because I had so much manipulation and sexual abuse in church, when someone uses spirituality to manipulate somebody, that really bothers me because I can resonate with that.
Yeah.
And it's one of the worst things that you can do is to that form of manipulation. So I probably have a different, reaction to it in response to it than some people do. But I just
stronger.
Yeah. And some it's way more. Other people, they hate Yeah. So I don't like there's truly connecting with people, and then there's connectors where they connect to people by conning. And there's people that are really successful, and we talked about this last night, right? They're successful, and then there's people that are reporters of success. There's people that come up with, really great ideas, and there's other that just steal it and they package it in their ability to articulate it at orators and speakers and writers and all that. And, a lot of the cop-outs are, well, there's nothing new under the sun. No one has an original idea. There's actually a lot of people that have original ideas, and there's a lot of people that have original experiences. And if you got an idea from somebody, here's the thing to do: cite them. Just say, here's where it came from. It doesn't often
it doesn't give or take away from you.
Yeah,
right?
it strengthens it because it doesn't.
Agree.
Yeah, I think it all comes from a form of neurotic insecurity to where you cannot quote somebody where you got an idea from because you somehow it's going to diminish the way you look. It's like, no, but then when you get caught doing it, so I know we're kind of hampering this point, but the thing is everybody has a purpose in life, even if it's to serve as a bad example.
It's true. It's true. And someone once told me something about confidence and competence. And, it's like the people that have so much competence have actually less confidence. And the people that have so much confidence in what they're doing, they actually have much lower competence.
That's very true in many situations, if not most.
Yeah. No, that's true.
Yeah.
So I want to go back to the whole idea of givers and takers, because I want to kind of bring something a little bit personal that I struggle with. So I absolutely identify as a giver, and I think I feel more comfortable in the position of a giver. Even something as simple as, like, if I was to go to dinner with a friend, I want to pay, right? Because I don't like that feeling of someone paying for me, and it's like, and it's in everything. Like, I love adding value, giving, doing things for others because it makes me feel good. But then on the flip side, I'm completely uncomfortable with anyone doing anything nice for me.
Yeah, well, okay.
So is this a problem for most givers?
Yeah, for a lot, including myself. Okay.
Talk to me about that.
Well,
I need help.
I mean,
It's true.
Part of it is you slowly or quickly take it in when someone gives you a sincere compliment before brushing it off, saying,
Right.
nah, you know
Yeah.
what, because there's a part of before you even verbalize it, as you're hearing someone being nice to you, you're diminishing
Resistance.
exactly right. I have a friend, Stephen Pressfield, who wrote a great book called The War of Art, right? And a great
I've heard
book.
of that,
I
yes.
love that book, and I, you know, Stephen's been a friend for over 20 years, and so we have resistance oftentimes to someone saying nice things about us based on how it was modeled for us in childhood from our parents, you know, from our environment. So I have a Genius Network member named Dr. Don Wood, who's a trauma therapist, and he used to be a hockey player. And he says, if you understood the atmospheric conditions of somebody's life, it would make sense why they are the way that they are. And so as we become adults, as kids, oftentimes you can't do anything about it, right? You have those, you know, you're not fully independent, or maybe not at all, right?
Or in control of your environment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
As you become an adult, though, I believe not only can you learn from the atmospheric conditions of your life, first off, by being aware that you, everyone, look, Jay Shetty, you know, we talked about Jay Shetty. I mean, the atmospheric conditions of his life, if we knew, would make sense why he did what, or anyone, people that are, you know, Mother Teresa to John F. Kennedy to Hitler to, you know, you name anyone, the atmospheric conditions of their life, if we knew every aspect, it would make sense how they became. So from that standpoint, you can have empathy and care for yourself. It doesn't make it okay for people to go out and hurt others. It does, though, give an understanding of like, how the hell does the world work? How does everyone show up the way they are? And I believe as adults, if you are intentional and if you really look at yourself and look at your life, you can look at the puzzle. And I think we can change the atmospheric conditions of our own lives as we move forward. And I believe, depending on what you put out in the world, you can change the atmospheric conditions for others. And if you do it in a certain way, you might actually shift or change the world, because there are people every single day that are, for good or bad, that are altering the atmospheric conditions of the environment, of society, of politics, of tech, of personal development, of you name it.
Yeah, it's true. And I think like sometimes we don't even recognize how powerful we actually are as beings.
Yeah.
You know, and in what we believe. And I think a lot of times we just don't believe we could do it, or we believe it's possible, but we don't believe it's possible for us.
Right. And so to go back to your thing of like, okay, I can give, but it's really hard, you know, hard for others to give to me. Yeah. So you just practice on it, and you also you esteem yourself. I mean, you come to your own resources, and you allow people to help you. And I think part of that, though, is seek out people that are reciprocal. Because here's the hardest thing: people that are real givers, they are targets for narcissists. They are targets for sociopaths. They're targets for psychopaths. And there are people that are so badly damaged that look for easy marks, and givers are easy marks.
Because we like to see the good, right? Like,
until they boundary themselves.
Until they burn us.
And that usually comes from pain. You know, here's the thing too. Humor really helps a lot. You know, I love the line where comedy is pain plus time equals comedy. You know, if you have pain in your life and you give it enough time, oftentimes you can look back at, not always, some stuff is so painful that it could take years. But I'll tell you, try to think of something in your life that when it happened in the moment, you're like so distraught, so embarrassed, so hurts, it felt so bad. And you can look back at that now, and you know, like my late friend Sean Stevenson, you know, who was my best friend, you know, he would always say, you know, rejection is God's protection. And you know, the thing with, there are times where you get rejected and you're like, oh man, I feel so bad, and then you look back, you're like, thank God that person rejected me, because or that situation, I didn't get that job, or I didn't get that opportunity, which looked like an opportunity at the time, but I dodged a bullet, right? So, and we can laugh at a lot of things that have happened in life, but at the moment, so when things suck, and they do, and there's always going to be things that suck. I often think of success, because people, you know, what does success mean? I mean, most people in America, you know, they ask, you know, what do you do? They're really trying to determine who you are, right?
And how much do you make?
Right, right. So they have these weird measures of success. Now, weird is relative. You know, if someone wants to be in great physical shape and another person wants to be a millionaire, Would you rather be a millionaire and be in horrible physical shape, or would you rather be poor and be in great physical shape? I mean, maybe different people have different answers at different times, but how you measure success is your value system. And so you're going to run across people who have a different value system than you. And so at this stage in my life, success, the things that would have killed me, psychologically, just I deal with that shit every Monday morning. I just have built up capabilities and the tolerance or other things, the stuff. The treadmill of crap doesn't end. Right. It sometimes lessens. But I have this whole distinction of have an elf life versus a half life, elf business versus a half business. Elf stands for easy, lucrative, and fun. And if it's not money, it could be easy, liberating, and fun. It could be ethical, lucrative, and fun. So elf is easy, lucrative, and fun, and half is hard, annoying, lame, and frustrating.
Nobody wants that.
Right. Well, and here's the thing. I used to just think of that as marketing strategies. Like, okay, how do we develop elf strategies versus half strategies where we generate business in one way is easy, lucrative, and fun. The other is half, hard, annoying, lame, and frustrating. And then one of my Genius Network members, Chris Voss, he's the former top international FBI hostage negotiator. Great guy, smart dude. He wrote a book called Never Split the Difference. And he took my elf concept and he figured out 20 questions and things that people can say to you in the beginning of a relationship or negotiation that identifies them as half versus elf. And I write about some of it.
Profiling.
Yeah, we write about some of it in my newest book, but he's also writing about it in his upcoming book where because he called me up, he's like, hey, I want to use your elf versus half thing. I want to write, is that okay? And I'm like, oh no, Chris, that would be terrible if a best-selling author like you wrote about my stuff. I wouldn't want that PR. No, so but the thing is like, just use that as a model. Like, look at the relationships. Is this person elf? Or is this person half? Look at the next 10 calls you get, messages, whatever.
How do I feel?
Yeah, exactly. The reason they call trust your gut, and oftentimes you will be confused by your gut especially if you have gut issues, right? But a lot of people have gut issues because they're in constant stress and their nervous system is all screwed up. And so they can't trust their gut because their gut ain't functioning. And a lot of that's because you're around toxic people, toxic food, toxic environments. You're not getting enough sleep, not getting enough water, not getting enough sunshine. You're not taking care of the $1 million racehorse. I use the $1 million racehorse analogy. Right. Yeah. How would you treat a $1 million racehorse? Best trainers, best food, best friends, best nutrition. You would the best races you could be in. You wouldn't have the horse up till 3 a.m. drinking alcohol, snorting crystal meth, watching porn. You wouldn't have a bunch of loser horses hanging around. You wouldn't overtrain the horse. You wouldn't.
Why do we do that to ourselves, right?
Because we're human and we're nuts.
Yeah.
No, it's
a simple answer, but it's the right answer.
I mean, being human is very complex. I mean, maybe the goal is to transcend suffering. And like the thing is let's go to business. Okay, so most businesses, not all, but most business is solving problems for a profit, right? You are, and not making problems worse. Not in some businesses sell shitty food. They sell toxic substances. They don't really help people. If you are in a business that does expand humans, not contract them, hopefully, like I never wanted to be in a business where someone had to lose in order for me to win. If I don't, my groups are not inexpensive. They're very expensive. And oftentimes people be like, it's a ripoff. Well, compared to what? What are you talking about? And most of the people that benefit from what I do in the world, I don't charge for it, from videos to podcasts, to books I give away, my addiction recovery foundation. I've never taken a penny, for payment from anyone for helping them with addiction recovery. I have an educational platform. I mean, we don't, but I believe I'm not doing that because I'm some angel philanthropic person. It helps me. I mean, I benefit from that sort of stuff. So
how do you benefit?
My own recovery, for example. It's really hard to when you immerse yourself in helping other people to not be connected with the tools of recovery. It's sort of my own trick. I interviewed John Cogden, one of the founders of Beachbody.com, years ago. They had joined Genius Network something like in 2010, and I had did an interview with Tony Horton, who at the time P90X was their biggest fitness program. And back then they were like a $400 million a year company. They ended up surpassing over $1 billion, but they're a big ass company. And I was interviewing one of the founders. There was Carl and Jonathan, and I said, so how do you stay? I think he was 47. I mean, the interview's on I Love Marketing, the podcast from years ago. And I was like, how do you stay in shape? Yeah, I think it was 47. I said, how do you stay in great physical shape when you're running this giant company? He said, well, it's hard not to walk the walk when you're putting yourself out there. So we're going to teach you how to be in great physical shape. It would be really incongruent, and it would be, I'd be a hypocrite. That's not, I'm not quoting him exactly because it's been, over decades since I did it.
Right?
Exactly.
Like you feel a little bit of external pressure on like, I can't be teaching fitness and I'm a big slob.
Right. So here's a strategy. If you think your life sucks, and I say this from experience, because there have been many times in my life where I just felt absolutely horrible. I could be in the most beautiful beach vacations, and inside internally, I just feel like crap. Why? Having processed trauma, right? So it wasn't that the environment wasn't right, I wasn't right. And sometimes you could be right, but in the wrong environment. So it works both ways. And so, the thoughts in my head related to where I'm at, I have to say, okay, like this is my life. This is how I feel. If I'm feeling good, then I can be a great contributing person. If I'm feeling horrible and I'm feeling shitty, why do I feel that way? And the greatest way to snap myself out of a bad mood is to go be of service to other people. So the strategy here is, if you are feeling like my life sucks, go find someone whose life sucks equally or worse, and that may be your interpretation, not theirs. Go to a homeless shelter, go to an animal shelter, go to a burn unit if you can assist, go and be of service to other people. That's why 12-step groups work so well. Even people that bash 12-step groups, it's like, how do a bunch of addicts, literally millions of every day, go to different forms of groups based on AA that was, invented in the mid-30s by Bill W. and Dr. Bob. And it's loosely held together by the contributions of a bunch of addicts, is because they all show up and it's mutual suffering. There's a bunch of people that are in pain. They're there to support and share experience, strength, and hope. And by doing that with each other, a lot of them get better. A lot of them improve. And I've seen people that have done horrible things completely transform just by hanging out with other people that have done horrible things and are just there to try to help transform people. So, I think most people, the rules in 12 steps is, anyone that's seeking, membership is available to anyone that is seeking help. So,
you know what that tells me? Connection heals.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. No, connection is everything. And it's hard to connect with other people if you're not connected with yourself. So when my life was not working, I was disconnected from myself. Yeah. And one of the points I was going to make is, most businesses is solving problems for a profit. And if you can, problems are the fuel to figure out how to do stuff. So some people make a living by creating problems.
Right.
And then, they create
solving them.
Right. Yeah. Like pharmaceuticals, not all, no, not anti-pharmaceuticals. I'm not anti, it's just how it's being used. So yeah, I mean, when I feel like my life is not very good, there's a lot of people whose lives are not very good, that if you can go to help. So hope heals if it's used in the right way. False hope is destructive. There's that term, and I don't remember the woman's name who originated the term, but it's called cruel optimism. And cruel optimism, this world is filled with self-help people, how to get rich quick, how to lose weight quickly, how to transform your life. And they just are kind of bullshitting people. They make it sound way easier. Life is freaking hard.
It is.
So one of the things I want to be very careful of is, you want to enroll people, and you want to, hype used ethically is massive enthusiasm for what you're selling. Hype used unethically is lying, exaggerating, misleading, bullshitting, bait and switching people. So, I'm all for enthusiastically presenting something, because you can't bore people into buying. I mean, you have to compel people in order to do stuff. However, to use cruel optimism and to try to make it seem like it's so damn easy. So one way to identify takers is, how do they present stuff? Are they making it sound too good to be true? Most of them always are. So
It's true.
and that's a hard thing with marketing too, because marketing is really such a valuable skill and important thing. I mean, it's the oxygen that often makes businesses work, but a lot of marketers are just unethical and they're con artists, and it's and so it's like this incredible art that has been polluted and distorted by bad players. But that could apply to almost any industry, almost any category.
And like Nick Peterson, of course, Nick. He's downstairs. I really resonate with some of, or not some, but probably all of his teachings, or most of his teachings. And one of the things that he talked about, which really resonated with me, because I feel like I've been on the other end of like someone really hyping me up, and then I buy and then I'm totally disappointed. And he kind of talks about like, you want to give the minimum effective dose. Like when you're hyping someone up, it's like, it's like dopamine, and you're, they're totally they're on this huge high, but then he talks about like, well, what's at the end of every peak comes, a valley. So it's like, but then it's like you're taking them through like an emotional roller coaster. So give them just enough that they need to actually make that purchase, but don't hype it up to the point where once they hang up the phone or the next day, they've got buyer's remorse because you've oversold them, and he talks about pressure versus presence, and how, you make a decision from presence. It's because you're curious and you genuinely just want to help someone in that call, and if they buy or don't buy, you're okay either way. And all you care about is that you actually helped that person. That person walked away better than when they came into the call, so that pressure comes internally. Like, I feel like Joe's 25K group program is for me. I feel compelled. I want to join it because I'm feeling called to do it. That's me putting pressure on me. Whereas if you come and, price is going up next week, like how many times do you get on a call and someone's like, the price is going up, this is, space is limited. And it's like, someone's putting pressure on me. But then what happens to me is I contract. I feel like, I don't want to do this. It doesn't feel right. I check my gut. Oh, it feels off.
And I think that's a good way to evaluate it. And oftentimes we all get sucked into persuasion. Media wouldn't work in any way, shape, or form, from headlines to, look, if you are constantly looking at your phone because of the anticipation, which is what dopamine is. I mean, to even understand this from like a level of enrollment, you can read books like, from my friend Dr. Anna Lemke, who wrote Dopamine Nation. She's a Stanford addiction doctor, to Nir Eyal, who I've had speak at Genius Network. He wrote Hooked and, several other books. And BJ Fogg, who wrote Tiny Habits, Tristan Harris, who was one of BJ's students, did The Social Dilemma. I mean, there's all these forms of, I mean, even Steve Jobs, who most people don't often see him as like a salesperson. He did education-based marketing with the Apple keynotes, which are famous, and he would advertise the advertising. I mean, in most of the keynotes, they would show a commercial because they have a captive audience, and it was like, hey, let's embed a commercial. I mean, it was brilliant salesmanship of how he did it, but it's how it's packaged. So, I don't have any issues with sales. Every person that's ever read a book, read an article, gone to a movie, gone to a restaurant and then told someone else about the restaurant, the book, the movie, the event, the whatever, is selling somebody. My favorite definition of selling is from my friend Dan Sullivan. And I say this on this video years ago. This is, I don't know, over a decade ago. They were filming me for a documentary, and there was some footage that never made it into the documentary, into the movie, but one of my team members saw it and uploaded it on YouTube. And they asked me the question, is selling evil? And then I talk for about under 4 minutes. I give this whole little riff on my thoughts on is selling evil. And I talk about Dan Sullivan. I asked him the question years ago, what's the definition of selling? And he said something, and I wrote it down because I thought it was brilliant. And it's, selling is getting someone intellectually engaged in a future result that's good for them and getting them to emotionally commit to take action to achieve that result. And I will write that on a whiteboard, and I'll ask people, what do you think are the most important parts of that definition? Selling is getting someone intellectually engaged in a future result that's good for them and getting them to emotionally commit to take action to achieve that result. And people will say commit or engage or take action. And I'm like, well, what totally changes that is good for them. If
Mhm.
you're getting someone intellectually engaged in a
Mhm.
future result that's
good for
that's
them.
not good for them,
Yeah.
like drink this alcohol, smoke
Right.
this cigarette, watch me tell my story of woundology that's completely manufactured and
Yeah.
made up.
Yeah.
Like I'm a monk, but I really a monk? Did I really do the stuff? And you know,
Yeah.
are you real? You know, you're
Yeah.
lying,
Right.
or you're misleading, or
So,
you're exaggerating. So
right.
you
So
know,
that's where it's evil, where it's like,
well, that I don't know. Look, I mean, there's since we're talking about Jay, I don't think he's out there killing babies and stuff. At least I hope not. However,
yeah.
is it authentic? Is it real? I mean, so that's for
But I think we can't discount the fact that even like, and I'm not saying that what he's doing is right, because clearly if that's what's happening, it's not right, not for him or anyone else. But like we can't discount the fact that he is also helping people.
Yeah, yes. Look,
Right.
I mean, I am in a room right now which has 2,200 books in this room, approximately. And I know that because we've scanned every what do you call the little barcodes,
Yeah.
and we've loaded them up into to a software where I know every book in here. The replacement value of all of the books in this room is over $80,000. So there's a few rare books in here because if you take 2,200 books and you get them a price of $20 each, that would be like 40 cents. So there's several books in there that are worth a lot of money. And then a bunch of just regular books. Well, if you ever invalidate the message because of the messenger, you may never read another book or attend another seminar.
That's powerful.
Because like
You're
no one's
right.
perfect, right?
You're
And
right.
if you want to know what someone's interested in, what are they writing books about?
Yeah.
Why am I writing books about connection and giving and addiction? Well, for one, I'm an addict. I'm an addict in recovery. I've gone through a lot of stuff. I know a lot about it. So why are people pontificating personal development stuff, and why are they sharing stuff? Because that's either what they're trying to have in their life or what they're interested in. And I'll tell you, some of the people that I've learned the best time management methods from sucked at time management. That's why they were so intimately aware
Correct.
of time management techniques.
Become obsessed with it.
Yeah. So that's not to say that everyone writing a book is full of shit. I mean, it's just to what degree are you being real? So what I try to do is I use a lot of self-deprecating humor because for one, I think it's funny. And secondly, I don't ever want anyone to think that I am, people will ask me for, marriage advice. I'm like, I've never been married. I can give you my opinion, but I'm not sure you should, take that as a decision-making process. And I will always, preface it by just because I'm good in one area does not necessarily mean I'm an expert in another. So when people, here's the funny thing about fame, what I've seen it happen, my friend, Shep Gordon, who they made a movie, Supermensch, and he even has a book, but he's Alice Cooper's manager for over 50 years now. And Alice is a friend of mine, is a singer that lives here in the Valley in Arizona. And he's like, fame, he says, I've never seen anything good come out of fame. And his job was to be, he's a manager of some very famous musicians in the world. And he's like, the people that rose the highest fall the farthest.
Correct.
And fame could be seductive. I had a pretty famous actor who had told me, he goes, if you get into this business without knowing who you are, it will misinform you. And so when someone gets a little bit of fame and notoriety, and I see this happen to my friends, they get New York Times bestsellers, they get a little bit of fame, they get a lot of followers, and they start believing their own PR. And they forget the fact that, like, don't get a messiah complex here.
Yeah.
That shit's very dangerous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes.
It reminds me of the quote, I think it's Winston Churchill, that says, like, with great power comes great responsibility.
Yeah.
So like when people look
I think
at you.
Superman said that too.
Oh,
yeah.
I think he stole it and I don't know if he got permission.
Yeah. No, this is a perfect example to be like, yeah.
But it's like, when I think of you, it's like, okay, people are looking up to you, right? Like you're like a mentor to people. And it's like, what does that quote mean to you?
Well, look, I say to people too, I'll make jokes about it. I'll sometimes speak at events and people want me to sign one of my books, or they'll want to take pictures with me. And some people get nervous, and I don't like seeing people be uncomfortable. And I would say, look, if you knew how many personal problems I have, you would not be worried about taking a picture with me. So I do my best to try to be approachable, and not for a minute do I ever want to make someone feel like here's the way that I choose my close inner circle friends is I look at people that are more powerful how do they treat people that are less powerful than them?
Mm.
And I mean less powerful in terms of status or maybe like
Like
how
a
do they
server or
exactly
yeah,
someone
yeah,
opens the door, do they say thank you?
right.
You know, do they have like I mean, and I'll tell you, before you get really at admiring someone just because you know you
Yeah.
love their book, their movie, their status, their position in society, see how they treat people.
What's their character?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Okay, so my book, what's in it for them?
Yes.
I don't outright say it. What you know, I'll say this now is I really wrote that book to figure out what did I do right in my life and where did I screw up? And how can I document it so people can learn from not just the things that I think are helpful with developing relationships, but what are the things not to do, right? Because writing that book was just as much of an analysis of my own life as it was to try to produce, you know, a book that would be helpful to other people. And so I wanted to write a really useful book.
Okay.
And one of the things is it's really people think they're buying the book for capabilities on how to develop relationships and meet others and get ahead in business and all that sort of stuff. And we give a lot of those. I call them dominoes. Like, what's the dominoes? However, it's really a character book because I hope that I can like the book is an example. When I sent out the manuscript to you know a group of people, the publisher wanted me to it's Hay House published that particular book, and they you know they want book blurbs, they want you know famous people to say things, and I was like, well, I don't want anyone to give me a blurb that has not read the whole book and also doesn't. So I said two things: don't give me a blurb unless you really like the book and you've read every word of it, because there's a lot of these books that have blurbs from famous people that have never read any of the book,
Right.
and it's kind of like and if you tell people to do that. And that's different than look, if you know someone, you write a book and they want to give you a character reference. But every week I get people sending me books asking if I'll do a book blurb. I'm like, if I don't read the whole book, I can't do that because it's like lying. It's not like lying, it is lying.
It is lying.
And so now if you want me to say, like, because I know you and we've been friends for 5 years, that you know, John is or Judy's a great person and they're really smart in this area. But I'm not going to say that this book is, you know, because oftentimes all people send me pre-written blurbs asking me to sign them that are just bullshit. And I'm like, are you like, I don't even want to read your book anymore. Now you've just showed me a side of yourself that you've just identified yourself that you're willing to lie. And, you know.
Yeah. I think that it rubs you on the wrong way when you see people misrepresenting themselves.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. You know, and is, you know, I mean, are there worse things that someone can do? Yeah,
for sure.
But you know, at the end of the day, it's like
I think it goes to your values though. And if you value authenticity, if you value honesty and integrity, then it just makes sense that those are not your people.
Yes. Yeah. My friend Dave Kekich, he passed away a couple years ago. He spent half his life in a wheelchair, paralyzed from the chest down. He had in his mid-30s, in the 70s, he was a millionaire. He was very successful in life insurance. He was in great physical shape. He had all the external trappings of wealth from, you know, he told me a house in Huntington Beach, beautiful girlfriend, convertible Mercedes, all this stuff. And
the dream life.
Yeah, just overnight, you know, he got into a freak injury while exercising and lost, you know, back then they didn't have the technology to fix him with surgery. He traveled the world for a couple of years trying to find a cure in a wheelchair for his paralysis and never could. His business partner stole, you know, several $1,000,000 from him. His girlfriend left him. I mean, the guy, and he wrote 100 credos called Kekich credos. His name was Dave Kekich, and one of the credos was, you know, lasting happiness does not come from consuming values, but by producing values. And producing more than you consume is the only justification for existence. That was the whole thing.
Oh, that's good.
And what I take out of that though is you can read every book. You know, you can read. I can name authors. You know, I won't because it might the association. But you pick any the 7 this, the 4 this, the 8 this, the whatever. Right? That these how-to books that have someone else's value system, and not that you can't learn from it. The way I interact with information, podcasts, seminars, courses, learning is I try to filter them through my own value system to help develop and mold it. And everyone's value system has come through their associations, the books they read, the people they hang out with, their upbringing, all of that. And so part of it is like, don't try to become someone else's value system. Look at it, learn from it, do a fact check. Is this right? Does this feel right? And develop, because lasting happiness comes from developing your own philosophy, your own value system based on the input that you have, not trying to act like you're someone else. Because if you try to be someone that, there's a lot of people that are very influential, that have set people down very bad paths in their life.
Yeah.
I mean, every person watching this, you can look at, what did this relationship do for me? There's dominoes, that I talk about where, that have changed the trajectory of my life. And some of those have not been very good. I mean, some of them led me into what ultimately became, addiction, which is this a solution to pain. Addiction is a solution to pain. It's an attempt to soothe some discomfort or some disconnection. And so part of it is to find the connection.
Yeah, it's to find the connection. It's really just masking the pain that you're already feeling, right?
Yep. Yeah. My friend Gabor Mate says, the question is not why the addiction, but why the pain. And so if you can get to the source of the pain, and so to go back to all this self-help stuff, there's a lot of people that will put things out there that help people, but they themselves, so you just there's a lot to be said about be careful of meeting your heroes.
It's true.
Don't put them all on a pedestal. I mean, it doesn't mean you don't respect people. It doesn't mean you don't admire them. I mean, I look at a lot of people that I don't really like their personalities. In 12 steps, they say place principles before personalities. So
no, that's good. So then, like, I'm curious, I know, like, when we started, you sort of said, like, well, because I'm an addict. So is that still part of, like, your identity, where you're always going to feel like you're an addict? No.
Well, I've had this conversation in many different ways, shapes, and forms, where someone earlier here at this event that's taking place, they were asking me about, I have a problem with that term in the first step of the 12 steps, powerless. Why are we powerless? And I said to her, well, we're all powerless in some area. I go, for instance, there's a road right out here. And if I was to stand in front of the road and there was a semi truck coming at me, I would be powerless in stopping that. And that would be a very bad idea for me to stand in the middle of a road with, there's a freeway right here. I could stand in the middle of the freeway and there could be a semi truck or any vehicle hurling at me at 60 to 80 miles an hour. I am not going to stop that. I am completely powerless in that situation of not getting badly hurt or dying. I'm not going to go fight Mike Tyson. I would probably be powerless in that situation unless I had a weapon of some sorts, right? And even then I wouldn't want to do it. I don't want to fight a bear. I don't want to wrestle with a lion. I'm powerless. So I said, instead of saying you don't have any power, think of Superman or Superwoman. There's kryptonite. We all have our kryptonites. And those things, we are going to be powerless over that. So the term powerless is not say you don't have any power. It's to take the addict from quit thinking they can intellectualize themselves out of some emotional disconnected thing. Because the people that have the hardest time with addiction are the very smart ones, because they think they can outwit it and they can outthink it.
Yeah.
Totally. And so to answer the question, do I always identify? For me, yes, I like the label of addict because it's how I define addiction. Addiction is a response to trauma, or it's biochemical. It's dopamine, it's serotonin. There's some people that are not. And this is my current understanding of addiction. I'm not saying I know everything about it. I mean, I spend a lot of time in it. It's a very complex thing, though. I've happened to take on something that's really difficult to kind of understand and treat. I've written 2 books on addiction recovery. They're up there, the Understanding Addiction and Recovery, and then the Miracle Morning for Addiction Recovery that I did with Hal Elrod and Anna David, because Hal actually asked me to do one because people are using his process for recovery. Anna, though, did all the writing. I was interviewed for it, but Anna's really the writer in that.
Team effort.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's kind of like you need community, you need it's biochemical, nutrition, you need the underlying trauma work. That's where meditation and breathing, the proper, and I emphasize proper use of plant medicines and psychedelics, EMDR, I mean, somatic therapy, anything that gets you into a flow state, moving the body, and then the environment, because you can be in a very toxic environment. Even if you have everything right, you could be in a very triggering toxic environment. So for me, the term addiction is a way to scratch an itch of being not okay, not feeling comfortable. So if I put myself in a state of deprivation, total disconnection, a bad environment, I am going to look for a way to feel better. And addiction is just one of those ways to do it. So
Soothing.
yeah, I mean, if you're depressed or lonely or anxious, there's nothing wrong with wanting that to go away. What the problem is how you scratch the itch. So when people
Yeah.
are like, I'm no longer an addict, it's like, well, put you in the middle of a war zone. You know, do you think you're going to just be all kumbaya and you're going to feel awesome? No, you may look for maladaptive ways to try to deal with the stress of that situation. So I don't look at it as a bad thing, but I think a lot of it is how someone defines it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I look at it as addiction as a solution. It's not a good solution. It is a bad solution for it has consequences.
Yeah.
It could hurt you, it could hurt others. You know, in the moment though, if you're feeling shitty, you know, inebriating yourself with drugs and alcohol could work. Smoking a cigarette could work. Eating sugar, gambling, watching porn, looking at the internet, workaholism.
Yeah, that's also a thing.
Yeah, there's a book up there, you know, on workaholism, and the subtitle is The Respectable Addiction. You know,
Yeah.
workaholism, you know, performance addiction. It's all
Right.
biochemical.
Yeah. Sometimes we do that because we're trying to overcompensate for the things that we actually don't want to address.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, sometimes we're trying to overcompensate, other times we're just trying to feel good because we don't,
Yeah.
for whatever reason, we're bored. You know, driven entrepreneurs become pleasure deaf. Or driven people, I shouldn't even just say entrepreneurs, where you're so highly stimulated that normal things like taking a walk or being with someone, you're bored out of your mind. And unfortunately, that's sort of the technology age we look at, where, you know, people are culturally addicted to war. You know, there's a book called War is a Force That Gives Us Meaning that was, you know, written by a war correspondent that just saw the most awful things. But, you know, there's a huge sort of dopamine hit, which is not a per se a pleasure. People often think it's, you know, dopamine is all about pleasure. It's about anticipation. And you can anticipate the fantasy, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to make you feel good.
Right.
The anticipation, because once you have it, you're like, oh, that's not what I thought it was going to be, and you want more, and you want more, you want more.
Right. Yeah.
So
and a lot of those addictions, that's what actually ends up happening. And then you're not getting the effect. So if it's like drugs, you're upping the dose.
exactly.
Or, you know, you're always looking for that next high.
Yeah. So how do we, so the key is it goes back to PR and stuff. Don't get high on your own supply, right?
That's good.
Don't take
high.
yourself so seriously.
Yes.
Another thing Dave Kekich said, which means a lot coming from a guy who spent half his life in a wheelchair and after that could never have sex again, that would take an hour to 2 hours every day just to get his like digestive system working. And this guy endured things that I could not even imagine, just like my friend Sean Stevenson spent his entire life in a wheelchair. And in spite of that, the guy was an amazing, influential, happy, not always. I mean, I was with Sean when he was crying and bawling. I would do the same thing with him when my life was all messed up. You know, Dave said, you know, things are seldom as bleak as they seem when they're going wrong, or seldom as great as they seem when they're going well.
Yes.
Lighten up, you'll live longer.
Oh, that's, you know, very good.
So I try to bring a level of like that, you know, like, yeah. So, you know, life could be amazing. You wake up every day, you can write a love story, you can write a tragedy, you can write a horror story, you can write a bullshit story, you know, and tell others about it. You know, there's all kinds of ways to live life. I mean, I think, you know, and who am I to dispense any advice on anything? I mean, it's just, I'm just sharing my perspective, and you know, people want to share. I think some people,
but you hold the pen. Like, I think sometimes we forget, like, oh, but I hold the pen on my story. I get to write the love story or the tragic story, or, you know, it's like, okay, but we have the ability to do what we actually want. Right. So I guess one final question is like, okay, Joe Polish, if we remove everything, like Genius Network, your businesses, your relationships, everything all around you, and all that's left is Joe. Not Joe the business, not Joe with the relationships, just Joe. Who's Joe? Who's Joe at his core?
I don't quite know. I'd have to, all those things, there's what I think would be Joe. But until all of those things, if those things, which if given the choice, I wouldn't want all that to happen. You know, I would have to see, you know, there's what I think I would do versus what would really happen if I was in that sort of situation, I would like to think that I am a caring, useful human, that if I still had the capacity to think, I would still try to be reciprocal. And because there's times in my life where I've been self-centered and selfish and self-absorbed, and others where I've been very generous and I've been very caring. I'm very empathetic, and that has everything to do with sleep and water and stress and financial abilities. I've been dead ass broke and living on credit cards and struggling. I've been an addict. When I was 18 years old at my worst state, I weighed 105 pounds from freebasing cocaine for every single day for at least 3 months straight. And there was one week where I just ate hardly anything. And I got to, and I look like a skeleton. I've had, guns in my mouth when I've been suicidal. And I've had a lot of people that, thank God, believed in me more than I believed in myself, and just happened to be there. So lucky. So what I would like to think is, man, as long as I'm not starving to death, I would like to think I would try to be present, and I would want to be resourceful, and I would try to figure it out. I've been in pretty dark places, and I never want to use that as a way to manipulate others. I meet people almost daily because of the work I do in addiction recovery, that I hear stories and I'm like, how on earth this person is the caring, loving human that they are, having had that shit happen to them. I've heard stuff that just,
it's because that shit happened to them.
Yeah,
that they're like that.
Yeah. I think that's the case. Those are the people I seem to admire the most. There's that line that hurt people hurt others, and there is truth to that. But there are hurt people that don't hurt others. There are hurt people that take care of others and have deep empathy, and they're not shits. They're just good, caring human beings. And so I don't know why. There's of course explanations for it. I just am not smart enough to know why that actually is. I just know that, everybody's been through difficult stuff. Try to give people the benefit of the doubt, unless they're constantly repeat offenders. And
right.
And the worst are people that have financial means and they're doing really well and they still are conning. That to me is like, what the fuck is wrong with you?
Great.
Yeah. And so who would I be? Hopefully I would be present.
I like that.
Look, I've never read an Eckhart Tolle book and I'm like, oh, this taught me how to be a millionaire or anything, because it's not a business strategy book. But it's certainly, I love his, there's a lot of spiritual leaders that write books that I think are just complete con artists.
Not him.
No, I've never met him, so I don't know. I actually I like Eckhart. If you want to ask me that question, it'd be like Michael Singer, Eckhart Tolle. There's a handful.
Yes.
Others names, that are well known. I think they're full of shit, but they're very famous. And so there's the pain body though. The presence though. There's a great guy who's not a good businessman, and has no interest in making a lot of money. Like anyone, he, of course, if a bunch of money fell in his lap, it's not like he would reject it. But his name's Steve Ozanich. And he wrote The Great Pain Deception. And this is the smartest guy that I've ever met on physical pain in the body. I've referred lots of people to him to do sessions that have physical pain, because most physical pain is not structural, it's psychological. And most people, until they go deep into that, they cannot accept that. They resist it. And there's plenty of doctors that will have scans and show everything as to why you're in all this physical pain. And he's really done a great job of not only citing and acknowledging the work of Dr. John Sarda, which originated the term TMS, which was tension myositis syndrome, then tension myoneuro syndrome. And then it's just called the mind-body syndrome, which is psychosomatic. And it's basically that most physical pain is caused by oxygen deprivation in the muscles, tendons, ligaments brought on by repressed emotions, predominantly anger and rage. Not all pain. There's a lot of breaks. There are tears. There are injuries. There are diseases. There are tumors. However, I was in constant physical pain for most of my adult life until about a decade ago, and I finally opened myself up to accept the fact that I'm just really stressed, and in my consciousness is it's all an unconscious sort of, you don't feel the feelings. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel rage, but the pain is your brain's way of trying to protect you from feelings it does not want to feel. And so he's a really present guy. And it's like people be like, well, what do I have to do? What do I have to do? He's like, that's the problem. The problem is you think there's something you need to do. You need to go get a chiropractic manipulation. You need acupuncture. You need physical therapy. You need surgery. You need, PRP or, prolotherapy or whatever. When in reality, you're just stressed. You're just and it's brilliant, but it's so difficult to grasp that when you have so many forces telling you, no, you got this, you got that, and and people will never get this with a 5-minute discussion of it. Their brain will be like, that's bullshit. Like even what I'm saying right now, someone will be there, I mean, I have had pain in my knees that blew up like twice the size, the injuries, all kinds of stuff, and
from stress.
absolutely, that but I'll tell you, I read Dr. John Sarno's books 15 years prior, but my brain refused to see this as a possibility. It wasn't until it got so severe that I was completely debilitated in a state of desperately seeking out help for pain that could not, laying down to anything would not make it go away. And I had reached out to him, and I had not even read his damn book yet. He's written several books, but his first book is The Great Pain Deception, which is brilliant. Steve Ozanich. And I've done a podcast with him. I put a video up recently on YouTube with in an interview we did. But it goes back to the, if you were dropped off somewhere and you had every title, everything stripped away, maybe I'd feel better. Maybe the restlessness, maybe the pursuit of happiness causes most unhappiness. So
because it's a constant pursuit,
right,
which means you never have it.
Yeah. Dan Sullivan says the only thing that he would disagree with is life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. He would say life, liberty, and the expansion of happiness. So there's there's a lot of things that humans just need to meddle with stuff. They need to do stuff. I think for me, just try to be a useful person. Learn. Take care of yourself physically. It's that line, that proverb, he or she who has their health has 1,000 dreams. He or she who does not has only one. So it's like, we're able to talk here and do stuff. I spoke to a group of young people. I don't know how many years ago this was now, and about 800 young people in an event. And I had said, in the speech, I said, how many of you here are millionaires? And a few hands went up. Or no, I said, how many of you? I didn't say millionaires. How many of you are worth $1 million? And hands go up, and I go, anyone here worth 5 million or more? One guy raises it. Anyone here 10 million or more? Same guy raises it. I go, okay, how many of you would like me to give you $1 million? And a bunch of hands go up. I go, okay, how many of you would pluck out one of your eyeballs if I gave you $1 million? And no one raises their hand. I'm like, okay, anyone pluck out an eyeball for 5 million? No one raises their hand. I go, anyone lop off one of their legs for 50 million? No, I go, how interesting. So you'd like to be worth $1 million, but you already have something that is worth $1 million to you, because you wouldn't trade your eyesight or an eyeball for $1 million. So clearly, and there are people in the world, and I'm aware every day that there's at least 3 billion people on the planet, maybe more, whose dreams would come true if they could exchange places with us, in the way that that's true. When I'm feeling like my life sucks, I try to remember, I'm pretty damn lucky, right? In a lot of ways. And so try to have gratitude for that. Because a lot of times I'm not grateful. Everyone's like, live in gratitude. It's like, there's a lot, I don't live in gratitude all the time. I sometimes have all kinds of stuff in my head that I'm fighting my own internal dialogue, right? And so I use those things as in metaphors and quotes, and to remind myself that, life is awesome, and I have my vision, and I have the ability to walk, and I can, I can talk, and I can see. I recently spoke with Andre Norman, who spent 14 years in maximum security prison. I've been funding this guy for 5 years. We went and spoke at Perryville Women's Prison here in Arizona, and I'd never done anything like that. We're there for 4 hours, and you check in your phone. You can't have your phone there, and it's like, it's weird not being without your phone for 4 hours, let alone living in prison for your whole life, right? Where they don't have access to that. And we talked to these women, and it was. I didn't have any prepared speech. I just got up and talked to them for, over an hour, and we went back and forth, and they were so appreciative, and you couldn't tell who did what in there. There were some that were there for murder. There were some that were there for crime. There were some that, I mean, and it was so interesting because there were a lot of them that I'm sure were on meds, but no one had a breakout. They really embraced us. And the CFO came up to me because she's sitting in the back and I didn't know who she was until like probably 3.5 hours in. She's like, you did such good work today helping them there. This is, and she was, it was so fascinating. And so Andre's in charge of a program that has 650,000 tablets in prisons that will be over 1 million. And you can't get on the internet. You can get on the prison internet system and download videos and stuff. And so we're putting Genius Network materials on there for entrepreneurship, and then Genius Recovery content on there for addiction recovery, because a lot of people that are incarcerated are struggling with addiction. We're going to be taking our Genius Network members to the prisons whenever we can schedule it and have them speak, and hopefully some of the prisons will allow us to film the presentation and then put those on the tablets. That's what we're working on. And it's cool because we're able to share content. But the bigger thing is what it does for like me or the people. And there's no one that's going to go speak at a prison and not be like, wow, this is, it said it right here. So, I'm constantly trying to put myself in situations to give myself a contrast to not get so caught up in my own life. And, there's a lot of people that are struggling. And I think, if you feel like you have difficulties in your life, just as cliche as it sounds, just go be of service, but be selective. That doesn't mean drain yourself. That doesn't mean, don't do it for PR. I mean, I'm talking about doing that here, but we're making that stuff public. But there's do a lot of stuff where no one ever knows. Don't even tell your wife or your husband or your friends. Go out and do, contributing things and just see what that does for you and remove the ego from, and that is hard to do. I mean, the ego of me wants people to like me. I don't want people to, think I'm cool and all that. And
it's natural. Like it's normal to feel that way, but it's also good when you can also humble yourself. And be of service to people who probably don't have 1% of the life that you live.
Right.
And it does create appreciation, but I think it also creates a situation where some people feel like, well, I shouldn't be sad, or I shouldn't be depressed, or, because it's like, oh, I don't have a reason to. Like sometimes people who are highly accomplished actually feel guilty about the emotions that they're feeling. Right. Because it's like, I should not be feeling this because I'm very fortunate to have what I have. But then it's like, then we disqualify our emotions. I think the most important thing is just to embrace what's showing up for you, right? Whether it's good, whether it's bad, and not try to like explain it away or make yourself feel worse because you feel guilty for having the emotion in the first place.
Right. No, totally. In 2018, I was in Scottsdale doing an event at a location in Scottsdale. And I came out of this building and I was going to get my car, and I was with a couple of other people, and we were loading some stuff in from the building. And this guy on the other side of a chain link fence, he was clearly a homeless guy. And he's like, hey, do you have, is it possible to get me a cup of water or something? I'm like, hold on a minute. So I went back in the building, got a couple of bottles of water, got some energy bars, grabbed some drinks, and I had like a whole bag of stuff that I brought out to this guy. And, and so I handed over the fence, and I'm like, so how long you been homeless? He's like, oh, about 6 years. And he was really articulate. So I was like, so what happened? He goes, well, I used to work in the IT department of a company, and there was a house invasion, and I was tied up, and I had guns to my head, and they stole a bunch of stuff from me, and I was so traumatized from the experience that I've never been able to kind of hold a job since. And he goes, and a lot of people, they think, if you're homeless, they'll yell at you and they'll be like, get a job, quit being so, and people don't realize if you don't have an address, you can't really get a job. It's not that easy. He had total PTSD. And he said, he goes, so I've been homeless. And he goes, you know what though? He goes, it always works out though. And then he starts talking, and he goes, it's difficult. I got to get food every day. I got to figure out where I'm going to sleep. I get, you find areas where you can, sleep and stuff like that. And he goes, it's challenges. He goes, but I've learned things always work out. And I'm sitting there going, Jesus Christ, I'm having a freaking homeless guy give me a motivational talk about how
Yeah.
things always work out. And that
Yeah.
was like, it was, and I just wished him the best. And I was just pondering that going, my God, he actually had a really good attitude. And it simultaneously seemed so weird that a guy that smart, but then I realized, it's not about intelligence.
No,
It's
it's
about
not.
these life circumstances, and intelligence helps. I mean, seriously,
Yeah.
I don't want to
He's
discount that.
figuring it out too. Like
Yeah,
is
you know,
surviving.
he,
He's figuring it out for himself.
and at that moment in time, he
Yeah.
seemed to have a cheery attitude, and he did not
Yeah.
seem intoxicated at all. He seemed very lucid, and it was really just interesting. So, you never know. And like going back to the women's prison, I mean, there was one woman that came up to me, and in the beginning she goes, yeah, Andre had introduced, and Andre, by the way, had been there in November. Okay, so several months previously, last year had gone, and so here we are in February at this prison, and we're talking to these women, and this one, so they had known about my addiction recovery stuff because Andre had mentioned that, and if anyone wants to know who Andre is, AndreNorman.com. You can look the guy up.
We'll link it in the description.
Okay. Yeah. And so I have this great interview with Andre and Stedman, who's Oprah's boyfriend. We did that during the pandemic because they do stuff in prisons together. But anyway, she had come up to me and said, I really hope, you guys do stuff for mental illness. And, and she was really nice and seemed like a really, like, just very attentive. And then towards the end, she came up and told me, she goes, yeah, I'm here because, I had in one of my, manic depressive states, bipolar states, I killed one of my children, and then I killed another one of my children. She's saying this, and I'm like, I have no idea. And I don't know her name. And, I would have never had any idea. And it was like and I had to step back and be like, wow, you just don't even know what and you could, I mean, when she was telling me that, you could just see how pained this person was, and I don't know who this woman is. I didn't try to find out. I just stepped back and said, wow, just the life circumstances that people go through, and if you're on the receiving end of someone that has murdered someone, I mean, the disdain, the hatred, the whatever the interpretation of that is, considering the circumstances, has got to be enormously difficult. And also, a lot of people would be like, well, I'm never going to go talk to someone like that. And, one of my friends who's an amazing therapist has met with, billionaires and famous people and everyday people. And he also goes and spends his time at prisons talking to sex offenders voluntarily, and I'm like, why do you do that? He's like, well, I can always see where things can end up in life if you have the same type of circumstances that put them there. And it's like, man, you really have to evolve to a certain level, and most people would not understand that, and they would be like, screw those people, they need to burn in hell. And other people are like, no, I'm going to try to find the compassion, or at least I'm going to try to learn from it. So, even when I help people that struggle with addiction that are not, people that I, with my own judgments, do not like, I've had to learn to say, okay, sit down and hear their stories. Even if you can't do shit about it, just try to be present with it. And what can you do to be helpful and useful and listen? And that takes an enormous amount of patience to do. Like, let's, without being political, let's talk about a guy running for president, Robert Kennedy Jr.
Okay.
So Robert Kennedy, so I interviewed him, so I've interviewed over 1,000 people, but, and I didn't know if I'd vote for this guy or not. It wasn't about that. It wasn't a political campaign. It was like bringing him to one of my events to interview him. It wasn't a fundraiser. And, this guy's been in recovery for 40 years. He goes up to 9 12-step meetings a week because he was a heroin addict between the ages of 14 to 28 after his father got assassinated, which would make sense. Famous family, father gets murdered, your uncle, um, and
addiction is masking pain.
yeah,
So that really does make sense.
yeah. And it's like, I had interviewed Ramani Devasala, and she's a brilliant narcissist
Oh,
doctor. And so I got this great interview with her online. And my first interview with her, I said, "Do you think anyone could become president without being a narcissist?" And she's like, "No, I don't think so." Right. And I really don't think he's a narcissist. I mean, now
okay.
people have narcissistic tendencies. Um, and that's up for debate. And I'm not a doctor here, so I'm not diagnosing who's this or that or whatever. Uh, I will, what strikes me though about Bobby is that after 40 years, this is his 40th year in recovering. God knows how many 12-step meetings that he has
Everyone.
been in.
Mhm.
That just does something for your character. It just really does. I mean, and I think he's a genuine, I don't agree with all of his policy and stuff, but he's a genuinely good human from my interactions. That's my current experience and belief. And it's like, I would encourage anyone that if you, even if you are not a addict or identify as an addict, go to an open 12-step meeting and just sit and listen to the stories of what some people go through. And they're all there for one purpose, which is trying to get better.
Yeah.
And when you put yourself in that environment, if you like it or not, and I'll say to people are like, well, 12 steps don't work. It's like, no, they work quite well. And the latest research is that they work way better than the bad branding that they've gotten in the past. But I always tell people, it's like going to a gym. If you went to a gym and you sat on the bench and you didn't lift the weights, you didn't do the exercise class, you would never say gyms don't work. Gyms work if you do the exercise. Well, 12 steps are not attendance programs, they're step programs. So if you do the steps, you get a sponsor, you're going to get more out of it. So the point is, there's all kinds of ways for humans to do life, right? And you got to do something. And so pick and choose, the relationships, have a program for living that makes sense to you. Learn from people that you can admire, see how people that when they're off stage, how do they treat people? Are they performers? Are they really, are they really congruent to their message? No one's perfect. No one's going to be, I've made amends to as many people that I can think of that any of my actions may have harmed or hurt or whatever. And there's probably a lot of people that, I'm not even aware of, right? However, that's just, part of life. And I'm I try to help addicts. I think, who do I want to be a hero to? Learn that from my friend Dan Sullivan. I want to be a hero to entrepreneurs that are doing good work, because there's a lot of people that are business owners that are kind of shitty. And there's a lot of people that aren't business owners that are kind of shitty. And there's a lot of business owners that are amazing. And there's a lot of, humans that are amazing. So, you got to kind of take all this with, with a bit of open-mindedness and, just, just wake up every day and do the best you can to live as much of an intentional, productive, contributing life. And if you spend more time giving than taking, I think life works better that way.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Yes, it does. And it's also about like learning to have self-compassion for yourself and have self-compassion for others.
Yeah.
Life is just better when you can be more kind to yourself and more kind to others and create more kindness in the world too.
True.
Yeah.
True. And if all that's, like I think if they gave all politicians and angry people plant medicine journeys in the proper way, it would add a lot more compassion into the world. But Ram Dass has that line, we're all just trying to walk each other home. And I think when it's all said and done, the people you hate, the people you have issues with, you might be like, wow, those were my greatest teachers.
Yes. Yeah, it's true. It's true. It's like I recently had an interview with Rob Dubay. I don't know if you know him.
Yeah.
He's absolutely amazing. And one thing he told me was
Gino's partner.
Yes.
Gino Wickman. Yeah, Rob's great.
Rob's amazing.
Rob's a new Genius Network member.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I'll be meeting with Rob next week again. Yeah, had a wonderful connection with Rob. I think what he's doing on the 10 disciplines, helping entrepreneurs really get back to their true self.
Yeah.
And I think Gino's book's coming out I pre-ordered it. I think it's on Tuesday. Shine. Yeah, it's
I
coming
got
out
a release copy. I should show it to you.
Please do.
Just to annoy you. No, those guys are great.
Might disappear. I'll bring it back tomorrow.
You can borrow it tonight and leave it here if you want.
That's what I'm saying.
No, which is you just said that, did you? No, Rob's awesome. So what were you going to say about it?
Yeah, I I loved how it's like peel back the layers, you know,
Mhm.
like he has this true self-assessment on his website, right? And like how close are you to your true self? And
Right.
I think I scored at like 64%,
Mhm.
right? So it's like, okay, so yeah, I've got things to work on, like stillness, taking time off, meditation, like all those things I don't do, right? Or I do very little. And I just love how like he really tries to show you like it's not the things in your life. It's like peel that all away and then like you really get to who you actually are in your essence. And I think a lot of us are scared to find out who we really are.
Sorry, I keep kicking
No, it's
you.
okay.
No,
You
yeah,
know,
I mean,
like
I can speak for myself. Yeah, I mean, there's things I try to avoid about, because oftentimes, who am I? I mean, there's like, I don't
I
know,
know, and that was my
you know.
answer too. It's like it's hard to, it's because sometimes we don't ask ourselves those questions.
Yeah, and there's other times where in what state are you in when you ask yourself that question? Like
Mm,
what I've noticed, so I do saunas and cold plunges, and I can ask myself a question, but with my nervous system where I'm like completely at the
yeah,
point of like I'm going to have a heat stroke, if I ask the question, I'd be like, I just want to get the hell out of
this is
here.
not the time.
Yeah, yeah, no, exactly. So, part of it is you ask the questions, you look at it, and you explore also the environment you're in, the space
Yeah.
you're in, because you never step in the same river twice. And so you don't just ask the question, you continually,
Hmm.
look at, and I mean, what's that
Hmm.
line? Stephen Covey is one of the people that said it, Chris Widener, people judge themselves on their intentions, they judge others on their actions.
How true is that?
Yeah. So, I was in a room with Chris and he says, how many of you ever been screwed by somebody? Someone screwed you over? And about half the people raised their hand. And he said, how many of you have ever screwed somebody over?
Mhm.
And a couple of people raised their hands like, oh, how interesting that there's more of you that feel you've gotten screwed by someone else than you've screwed other people. And he's like, because we judge others by we judge ourselves by our intentions, we judge others by their actions. And I always look at that too. It's like, you could be 100% convinced you are right or doing the right thing, but look at your actions.
Yeah,
How are they impacting other people?
right.
And that's really hard when you're like, I shouldn't have said that, or
Hmm.
I wish I would have not gone there, done that, done this, that sort of thing.
Hmm.
And so it's that's how you develop a value system. I had the
That's
young
good.
guy who I was helping with addiction recovery, and this was about a year ago. He had asked me this question. He's a great guy, super smart. And he said, "Do you try to be a good person?" He said, "He's like, do you try to be a good person?" I was like, you know, am I a good person? Am I not a good person? Do I try to be a good person? I said, yeah. I actually think I work really hard. There's a part of me that would love to just do all this shit that when I was in active addiction, that I could do all the time, but there's consequences and
Yeah,
stuff. And I go, yeah, I actually try to be a good person. What is good? Everyone's gonna have a
yeah,
different definition of what is
definition.
good, but uh, from my own self-evaluation, I work to do that. I don't naturally wake up and like, oh, I'm just this, wonderful human. This is like,
Yeah.
I'm grumpy at times, I'm moody at times, I, want advantages at times, and I have to constantly evaluate,
Mhm.
how do I do this sort of stuff? And I'll tell you though, if you if you live in a way that you would admire, because you all what's the Jordan Peterson thing, the treat yourself like someone you're responsible for. Responsibility is my friend, the late Nathaniel Branden. He wrote many books, the Six Pillars of Self-Esteem, The Art of Living Consciously.
Mhm.
He wrote one book that didn't do very well, but it
Mhm.
was called Taking Responsibility, and it's an amazing book. And it's just like responding with ability,
Mhm.
and oftentimes,
Mhm.
we don't want to be responsible.
Right,
But I'll tell you, when my life is
right.
working, I'm responding to life, and when my life is not working, I'm reacting. And
Ah,
when I find myself reacting too much, I'm like, something is throwing me off.
mhm.
Because in a state of reaction, you're going to be an asshole.
Mhm.
If
Mhm.
not to others, to yourself.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
And I want to go back to, are you trying to be a good person or are you a good person?
I guess
I want to do a little bit of
I can have the opinion of it, but it's
yeah,
really nice if other people have that opinion. How does my team think of me? How does my
right,
partner think of me? How do
right.
my friends think of me?
Yeah. But I want to challenge you. What if you didn't think, what if you weren't trying to be a good person? And what if you just are a good person?
Well,
How would life be different? Or like, how would you change the way you think about yourself if you actually believe that you're not trying every day to be good?
well, in
You
the
are good.
yeah, like I like the person who I have become, and
Mhm.
I for most of my life I did not, right? So I have gotten to a point where I think well of myself.
Yeah.
And in the context of him asking, do you try to be a good person? If I would have said I am a good person, I don't think it would have done justice to the question, and it also would have not been true because I actively try to do things to better myself.
Yeah.
And I actively make effort to help other people, even at times when I don't want to. Some of
Mm.
these people that I like saying are, look, if Jay Shetty was laying in a hospital bed, because I have a lot of friends that are, I have his phone number. I had a text message thing with him going back to 2018. There's reasons why I, think what was written in the law, the writer spent a year doing research on that.
Right.
I mean, I think he did a lot of research, right? And hopefully the whole self-help industry doesn't get thrown into just because there's one person that they layer that on everyone.
Right.
Because I know a lot of people that are shits in the self-help business that are well known and famous and are narcissistic as hell. And everyone thinks they're authentic and they're anything but, and they're completely full of shit and they're scam artists and they're well known and they're respected. So I know a lot of those sort of people. If he was laid up in a hospital bed and someone said, "Hey, could you go talk?" Yeah, I would probably go and try to be helpful and useful for no other reason than he's a human,
Yeah.
right? And it's not because he's,
Yeah.
and that could be anyone. And if you've ever sat with someone, which I have several times, I was a primary caretaker for my father when he was dying. My mother died when I was 4. My friend Dr. Janice Dorn, who was a brilliant, you know, 2 PhDs, psychiatrist who became addicted and lost her license. And then just, and I met her after all that happened. And just like she became this loving, caring person. I mean, her and her friend Lisa, we were both the caretakers of her when she was dying. And when you're sitting with someone that is dying, and you can't do anything to fix it or make it better, all you can do is be present.
Yeah.
And there's that connection. You actually see the humanity in people and you kind of forget like all the good and all the bad
Yeah.
shit they did. You're just there with the person. And if they do more good shit, that's probably why you're sitting there, right? Yeah, most people don't like sitting with someone that's passing away that abused them or hurt them or despised them. But I've done a lot of therapy about the person that raped me when I was a kid. There's a lot of stuff. And I also look at that person and know that they had a lot of abuse done to them.
Right.
And it doesn't make it right. It really fucked up a good part of my life. And at the same time, this person had a lot of pain. I understand it. And again, it doesn't make any of it right. And it really uh, was very, I mean, it just, I still have scar tissue that I've never been able to fully remove. And there's not a day that goes by that I don't think about it. And at the same time, had those things not happened, I can't go back. Forgiveness is giving up the hope that one day you're going to have a better past. And
Yeah.
all I can do is reframe it. And there's some people I don't think you can forgive, especially if they're continuing to hurt you. Like my friend Ramani Devasala says, some things you can't forgive. You just have to let it go and remove yourself from the situation. So the thing is like, I don't like holding grudges, even though there are definitely things I hold grudges about. And
Right.
there are things that I have resentments for. And if I try to act like I've somehow transcended it, I'm not some enlightened being that's been, there's a lot of shit I can't figure out. So I try in some of those areas. And going back to your point, be it self-talk, be it whatever it is, I think highly of myself, not because I'm doing affirmations on myself and not taking action. I can point to a lot of things in life where I produce results for other people. And I constantly am putting myself in situations where I feel like I'm contributing and I'm getting the feedback from other people. So I hope at the end of my life, if there is some sort of service or whatever, I have a friend who I was at his memorial, his funeral, and the number one thing that people said, his name was Ralph Bloss. And when I was a long-haired ponytail carpet cleaner, and then I started teaching other carpet cleaners how to build and grow their businesses back in the 90s. He passed away, and he was one of the first people that had all of his distributors. He recommended, go have Joe talk to your groups of cleaners. He has stuff that works. It's really good. It's ethical. He helps people. And he didn't need to do any of that, and he was, you know, very encouraging to me. And when a lot of people like would make fun of me because I had long hair and a ponytail and I was young, and they didn't want to listen to some guy in his 20s telling them how to build and grow their businesses. And you know, the number one thing that people said there, and there were hundreds of people there. I mean, it was huge. And they're like, you know, he was so encouraging. He was encouraging, and I never forgot that. And I was like, you know, I just want to encourage when I can. And believe me, there's plenty of people that probably don't consider me encouraging. So, you know, whatever, it is what it is. Yeah, yeah.
You do what you feel is right for you.
Yeah.
You know, you show up in your authentic being and your authentic self, and you serve in the way that makes sense to you.
Yeah.
And not everybody's going to be receptive, and that is okay.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, they're not erecting statues to people that were not criticized. You know, every person that's ever had a statue erected to them was, in some cases, violently criticized. And you know,
comes with the territory.
But I don't think anyone's going to be erecting a statue to me. You know, who knows? The fact is,
you never know.
You never know, and that ain't the goal.
Stay open.
That ain't the goal anyway. The goal is to just, you know,
it's not the goal, but it could be the byproduct. Who knows?
Exactly. Well, Joe, my egotistical self requires me to have,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, Joe, this has been incredible. I love how you shared your wisdom and your insights. And it just sounds like you've done a lot of work for other people, but it sounds even more like you've done a lot of work on yourself.
Yep, I'm still in the process.
Right.
Yeah, do it all the time.
And I honestly believe that our inner work is probably never done.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like,
it's all part of the journey.
It is.
It's all part of the journey.
So, Joe, if people want to follow you and your work, where's the best place where they can find you and engage with you and learn more about you?
Well, they should just get that book, which is Life Gives to the Giver, which you can download for free at joesfreebook.com.
Okay.
You don't need to buy anything from me. It's not going to put you into an upsell funnel where you're not going to get any good stuff unless you buy a course. You know, you can opt into my email list if you want there, or you cannot, but you can download the digital version of the book. There and Joe Polish. I'm Joe Polish on X, on Instagram, now on Snapchat.
Oh, wow.
So I was just at the
very
Snapchat.
Gen Z of you.
My God. Well, I had a friend. I took Chris Voss, the former top international FBI hostage negotiator, to Snapchat over the weekend.
My
goodness. And we went there, and they're doing, and I never, you would ask me a week ago, would I be like now doing, and this is all brand new, by the way, at the time we're doing this, like this is just a few days ago. And
now you're snapping.
Yeah, Joe Polish, and you know, and then if anyone's struggling with addiction, geniusrecovery.org. It is a 501c3. All kinds of resources that are there for free. We're going to launch later this year a recovery kit. That's the first time we've ever sold a physical thing, but that'll be in you know, if everything goes well, it'll be in a couple of thousand Kroger pharmacies. You know, because they want to reduce the sale of pharmaceuticals in lieu of Opiate Awareness Month, which is in September, and Opiate Awareness Day, September 23rd. We're going to have physical recovery kits that really are designed for loved ones of people struggling with addiction. And there's going to be books and journals, and there will be a AI bot that you can dialogue with. There will be trauma release exercises. And all of those things digitally are available for free at geniusrecovery.org. And we have a great blog written by Ken Wells. It's amazing. And links to all kinds of different meetings. And there's an open letter of people. If you just click on the tab open letter, it gives my views on addiction and for people that are struggling with that. So that would, if anyone struggles with addiction or knows someone that is, hopefully that's a really valuable resource. Our crazy goal is to save 20,000 lives a year of the 100,000 plus people that are dying from opiate addictions. When I interviewed RFK, he said we have 2 Vietnams happening every year in America with overdoses. And so, you know, I don't know if we'll be able to accomplish that, but that's one of the things, like, what do we need to put out into the world? And so that's a far better use of my marketing skills than just you know, selling courses and stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We'll link everything up below. So do follow Joe. He's doing some incredible work, and he's truly changing the way we view addiction.
Yes.
Yeah.
Doing my best. Yeah. The goal is to change the global conversation about how people view and treat addicts with compassion instead of judgment, and find the best forms of treatment that have efficacy and share it with the world. So we don't run treatment programs. We just put out education and stuff. And that's that's what we're trying to do. So it's been a pleasure to
Quite a
to
pleasure.
talk with you
Yeah,
here
hope to
today.
do it again. Thank
Yeah,
you. Thank
you're
you for
welcome.
inviting me into your home.
Thank you
I
so much.
appreciate you.
Absolutely appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks.